just something in the chat as first one of these. Can I get a gut check? Like, can y'all hear me okay? Is the audio quality all right, etc.? We good. Okay, very cool. Nice. All right, so we'll give it another minute for people to join. Looks like we got 13 folks here. That's super cool. While we're waiting, does anybody, well, where's everybody from first? Like, let's get a show of hands. Like, where are we streaming in from? What's up, Tolga? Hello? All right, so the chat comes in a little faster on YouTube. Orange County, cool. Thank you. Canada, sup? Jersey, cool. I lived in Hoboken for a couple of years. It was fun, man. I was young. Yeah, I had too much fun. Poland, Austria, the Himalayas, Austin, Texas, Vancouver, British Columbia, Los Angeles. This is sick. Very cool. Okay. I'm very excited. Okay. We probably have, let's see, I would say we probably have 15 minutes worth of content today. It is not going to be like a super heavy lift. I'm going to walk y'all through a few things. I think I've got 10 or so slides. Basically, what I want to do is I want to respect your time, and then I'll answer questions along the way, but I've also saved some time for questions at the end. And I think like the main thing, and y'all will see it when I do some preamble, is like this is the first one of these I've ever done. I have no experience running a live stream. And so I'm really going to be seeking some feedback and because I'm trying to figure out like, should this be a part of the equation for me in the future and should I do it more often? Anyway, okay, so here we go. Let me get my slides going. I guess last question. Can everybody see these slides? Sick. Okay, thank you very much. All right, cool. A couple of disclaimers first. Number one, like hopefully y'all can kind of gather this from, any of the videos that you've seen, but like I don't know everything. I am by no means the best photographer in the world. I'm not even close. You might know more than me. It's very possible. In a lot of cases, some of you will. If this is not useful for you, I really encourage you to bail anytime. You're not going to hurt my feelings. My goal is very simple. Can I help a few people get 1% better today? Like it ain't fancy. So the sections we are going to cover today. One, the lighting approach I used on this photo shoot. Two, the camera settings that I use. Three, my favorite images from that shoot. A couple of wishes that I think I could have done better on. And then I've got time at the end on general Q&A from the group. Yeah, so that's what we're up to. My hope is that y'all will walk out of here knowing how I typically approach a one light setup in studio, a little bit about how I shoot, like how I cook the image in the camera so that I can edit it the way that I want. A little bit about what I'm looking for when I'm booking a studio in a new city, camera settings and like lenses and like gear I typically use. I'm only really going to talk digital today, but if anybody has any film questions, I really am happy to answer them. And then I have this here, like how I get behind the scenes videos to maximize the output of a shoot. I may hit that a little bit. And if anyone has any questions, we could talk about that too. So, okay. Let's see. Operational details. Use the chat. You can ask questions whenever. If you're on YouTube, it seems like there's like a 10 to 20-second lag. So like I'll keep an eye on the thread, and if I see any questions come in, I'll pause and I'll answer them. Especially if it's like relevant to what I'm talking about the second or at that moment. If it's something totally different that you want to just chat through, that's totally cool too. Just let's talk about it at the end. I'm seeking feedback. So like the email that y'all got with the link for this, you could email me anytime and say like, hey, this is what I liked about it. This is what I would prefer. Or you can send me a DM on Instagram. I'll read them. And then just be nice. I don't think we're going to have anybody that's talking a bunch of smack in the chat thread, but I mean, so yeah. Okay. First, let's just talk like lighting equipment for this setup, like that y'all saw for the photos that we're going to cover today. It's so dead simple. This was one continuous light. The color temp, if I remember correctly, it's going to be right around 5,000. Like I'm not going super warm with it. It was in a big softbox. There was the white diffusion sheet on the softbox, and there was no grid. And I see the one question on, is this going to be available for replay later? Yes, absolutely. The YouTube link, it will just be a normal YouTube video after you're done. So I'll email it out to everybody that was on the list. And like, if you didn't make it and you want to watch it later, that's totally cool. So, okay. Um, Back to this. Yeah, guys, it's one light, right? In a softbox, the sheet to diffuse it, there was no grid on it. I do like grids at times, but in this situation, it was just, that's it. It's dead simple. And I think what you'll notice is like I use this little screen grab from a behind the scenes video to show you typically about how I will set up light in terms of height and angle. I'm oftentimes going to try to position most of my artificial light, whether it's like the way I'm holding a flash or the way I'm setting up a softbox like this. I want it to be typically about 6 inches above the subject's eye level and then like tilted 10 or 15 degrees down. Like the framework that I tend to try to hit that Sam Domashek told me like 5 years ago in a workshop that I took with him was so much of what he's trying to do with artificial light, and it may have changed, you know, it was 3, 4 years ago, whatever. So much of what he's trying to do with artificial light is mimic angles and patterns of what the sun would do at golden hour. And so that's kind of how I think about like when I'm stationing a softbox and and I want it to be like one light, or when I'm holding a flash off camera, I'm often going to be about 6 inches to a foot above the subject's eye line and then kind of tilted, you know, 10 or 15 degrees down. So the light is essentially pointing right towards their eyes. I hope that makes sense. If it doesn't, we could hit it at the end or any follow-up questions. I'm happy to do it, but that's pretty much how I dialed this in. So, okay. Next, the position of the light. I, I'm by no means do I have anything like super earth shattering here for you today. You're building a triangle. So like you can see it here. I'm at the front left point of that triangle. Taylor, you can see that obviously it's a straight line between me, her, and or you know, the camera with me and her. And then the light is kind of off to my, I don't know, 1:30, 2 o'clock, whatever it is. So, and that's it. Like we're getting a little bit of bounce off of that white wall, which is great. And I'll talk a little bit more about like the effect of bounce in a minute. But yeah, guys, this is, I mean, this is how we did it. And I think if you're trying to figure out like how can I become more effective in studio with one light, this is literally a lighting principle that has been working since like 1660. It's called Rembrandt lighting. It's because when Rembrandt was like doing all of his paintings and self-portraits and stuff like this, that's how he was doing it. Like it's like just universally pleasing to the human eye to leave a little bit of contrast and shadow on one side of the subject's face. And it's up to you to kind of dial in like just how much shadow you want. You know, I tend to think like 50-50 or 60 lighting, 40 shadow, whatever, something around there is usually pretty good. But when you got one light to mess with, guys, like I'm not saying it's always going to work, but works a lot. And I think it's rock solid, and it's been rock solid for like 400 years or whatever that number is. So, okay. Oh, next, I want to talk a little bit about like hopefully that's clear. Like I don't have much more to say about it. Let me answer this question from Tyler. Are we keeping the center point of the softbox directly on the subject, or do you have it turned slightly so it creates a wraparound? Man, that's a really good question. Okay. I'm so glad you asked that because I should have put that in the slides. What I'm typically trying to do, and I don't always get it right, is I want the light, I'm going to try to make this make sense. I want it to sort of almost graze the front of the subject's face. So like rather than just like absolutely hitting them with it direct on, can I tilt the light 10 or so degrees so that it like the true path of the center of the light is like maybe right across their nose, if that makes sense. And the person that I learned this from, last summer I took Josh Ryan's workshop. He shoots a ton of guest catalogs, editorials, stuff like that. Like he's massive. And I noticed in studio what he was doing is he had this gargantuan like Elan Chrome softbox. Like I think it was like 4 feet wide or something. It was huge. And he had his light set up, and basically it was like the model, they were shooting walking shots in the studio, and the model would walk into the path of the light as the strobe would pop. So I don't know if that answers your question, Tyler, but in general, I'm trying to like tilt the light just ever so slightly it to pass in front of the subject rather than being like perfectly direct on for them. Yeah, thank you. I think feathering the light is a perfect term. You're going to find like there are things that since I'm self-taught, there's like a sometimes the terminology I don't know at all. Um, what happens if the studio has big windows? That's a really good question. I have two thoughts on that one. If the studio has big windows, it's a question for me, or the question is first, like, do you like the light from the big windows? Because sometimes you could just use that as your light source. If it's no good, like I think sometimes that's not what you want, and you can use curtains. I think try to use the curtains. If you can't do either of those, then what I'm typically trying to do is like I guess I'm going to try to make the light as powerful as possible to sort of overpower the light that's coming from the windows. But, every situation is going to be a little bit different. And in your situation, I think you could play it two ways. Either you have the light coming from the same side as the windows, and you're just kind of dialing, seeing, what works best, or you try to get as far away from those windows as possible. I don't know. Those could be a couple of options. It's a good question. If you want, DM me a picture of what the studio looks like and we can chop it up later. Um, Zachary, how do I balance ratios of light and shadow? Really good question. In general, I don't know, 60-40 light to shadow, maybe 70-30 light to shadow. I think it kind of depends. And like, I think the magic of digital is like you could shoot 50 of an image and you know t- um switch it up 2-3% each time. It's like, okay, let's get this, dial this in a little bit more, dial this in a little bit more, and then you find what you like if y'all ever saw me on set, it's such a like an iterative process. Like, no, that's not quite there, that's 8 out of 10, what could I do to get a 9 out of 10? And so that's what I would do. 60-40 to 70-30 light to shadow would be my thought. Let's see. Did I answer all the questions on that one? Yeah. Okay. Cool. Good. All right. Really good questions, by the way. Okay. So studio and bounce. Like, I want to talk a little bit about like the impact of the bounce, like how light bounces and reflects in a studio, and how it's a little bit different in a studio like this that has like a cyclorama wall versus like a paper backdrop. I am a huge proponent. Like, if I can pick between one of the two, I always want to shoot on, if I'm doing a white wall shoot, I always want it to be a cyc versus white paper. That doesn't mean like you can't shoot something sick on white paper. You totally can. I've done good things there before, but like when I'm looking for a studio, especially if I'm in a new city and I'm trying to find somewhere to shoot, and I'm on peer space looking through stuff, oftentimes like my one of my filters is I'm putting in cyc or cyclorama. So, and I think a part of it is because like one, I like having the space, like I like being able to spread out, and you just have more room to work with. Like sometimes I feel a white seamless paper, unless it's really big, can be super cramped. But I think the other thing is like I just like the way that the light bounces better. Like if you guys see on the kind of like frame left on the shadow side of Taylor in this photo, and I just see she joined, by the way. Taylor, you're welcome to jump in if you want to chat. Um, the there's some level of light that is, because it's coming from that right side of the frame, it's bouncing off of that white wall and coming back. And by no means do I understand all the scientific principles of it, but I just know that it looks cool. And so when in doubt, I think that's something, or not, maybe not when in doubt, when you're picking a studio and you have a choice, like especially if the economics are similar, try a psych studio versus one with white paper. I think you'd be really surprised. Some of the best studio work I've ever shot has been in a studio with a psych. So, um, and I think part of it is because the light just bounces in different ways, and because you have some more space. So anyway, I love it. Show of hands, like I don't know, or maybe chat or like an emoji in there. Like, how much experience do we have shooting in studios with a psych like this? Like, have we done it before? Is it like, oh, dude, I've never done that at all? Like, let's see. All right, you guys can just weigh in as you see fit. Psych never, always big backdrops. And like there's nothing wrong with that. To me, I actually, maybe my take is a little bit more nuanced than this. I love big backdrops when I'm using colors. Like I think I think red is so underrated. I love shooting on red, especially with flash. I always have a hard time with green. Um, I've had good luck with some different shades of blue, etc. I kind of like chocolate brown, weirdly. Um, the but there's certain paper colors that I always struggle with. Like, so I think a lot of photographers love charcoal gray. I can't shoot something good on charcoal gray to save my damn life. I don't know what it is. Um, yeah. So for y'all, look, we got a couple in the chat. They're like, I've never done it. If you, and I think different cities, some cities have it, some cities don't. So a lot of it depends on where you live. But the next time you're in a big city, especially if you're in the States, I can't speak to the international market. Um, Peerspace or Gigster, Giggster, both are pretty solid options. And um, yeah, I don't know. It's fun to get to do, and if you can find one that's cheap, it's really fun to practice on. So cool. You built a home studio. Nice. Yeah, Tolga, red and blue do go hard. I mean, of course I'm biased. Like, yeah, okay. Um, Anyway, I don't feel like when I say that, like I love a studio with a site. Don't feel like, oh, I don't really have a lot of access to that. I just have paper. Like you can make amazing things with paper. Like world class Titan photographers have made amazing magazine editorials and commercial campaigns on paper backdrops or shot with a V flat as the backdrop. Like you wouldn't believe the arts and crafts that have made amazing work. So don't feel too bad about it. But if you get a chance, I recommend it. It's fun. So, all right, cool. Um, Okay, camera settings. I've weirdly been getting a handful of questions about how I set up my camera when I'm shooting. So, like, we'll see if you guys have anything you want to know. Here is how I had my settings dialed in on all three on three sample images. They're all really similar. I had my aperture pretty wide open. This lens, for context, can widen out to f2 to f2.8, depending on how zoomed it is. I'll show you what lens I was shooting on in a second. So my aperture is pretty wide open for all of these. I was shooting between 1/160th and 1/200th of a second. That's kind of a little slow for me. And I tend to really try to never go below 1/160th of a second unless I'm doing something specific, like maybe shutter drag, like if somebody's trying to move fast or something. I've been practicing a little bit more with that lately, and I'm not that good at it, but I'm trying to learn. But yeah, usually 1/160th to 1/200th of a second is about as slow as I want to go because I feel like I miss moments, like if somebody's moving, I won't catch it crisply. So, um, and then ISO 400. I want to talk a little bit about ISO because I got asked a couple of questions about this in the DMs recently, and it made me realize like, oh, maybe my perspective is actually not that normal. And so I'll tell y'all what I do. When I took my very first workshop, like to just learn how to take pictures of people, it was 2017. So this is, yeah, 9 years ago, give or take. The dude that was teaching the workshop, I thought it was wild. Like this guy lived at like 2000 ISO. And I thought that was really interesting because I had always heard like, why would you go that high? And his whole approach was like he really liked grain in his images, but he didn't want to go through the hassle of shooting with film, which I think a lot of people feel like the Fuji X106 is super popular for similar logic. But so he was like living at 2000 ISO, and like when you look at it at the image, like there's a lot of grain in it, and I thought it looked nice. So I tend to, I don't know, somewhere between 400 and 800 ISO on a lot of what I shoot. And it adds a little bit of grain. Sometimes I'll add a little bit more in Lightroom. I don't want to go as high as he did. Like, yeah, Ivana, like I feel the same way. It was lofty. But I do like adding a little bit of grain. And so that's why I do that versus like 1 to 200 ISO. Um, let's see. Any other questions on like camera settings? Like nothing really fancy here, I don't think. Yeah, I thought it was interesting too. Just there's so many different ways you can approach this. So, oh, I'll hit this now before I move on because I may not remember it later. So, one thing to tell y'all is I don't know what you're typically looking at in terms of your exposure compensation when you're when you're shooting. But one thing that I always do is I'm typically trying to underexpose by half a stop to a stop. So like on my Sony, it's going to be negative zero point 0.3 to negative zero point 0.7 is how it sets it up for me. I'm usually trying to underexpose somewhere in that range, maybe underexposing one full stop. So it'd be like -1 on my camera. And part of the reason, or no, the reason that I do that is because I want to make sure that I push the camera a little bit more into preserving the richness of the shadows and the contrast, because I feel like when I go into edits, it's easier to bring it up and brighten an image the way that I want it to versus backing it down like I shot it too bright. And I don't know. I mean, that's probably not that fancy or unique, but I figured I would just tell y'all, like, if you, this is how I do it. So, um, let's see. Zachary, is the lowest shutter speed to balance the ambient light versus the power of the key light? Yeah, that's a really good question. Um, what I don't want to do in that situation, I want it all to feel kind of maybe not uniform, but I don't want to create like a significant amount of separation between the subject and the background. Like in this situation, I wanted it to kind of feel like, a little bit uniform. You see some photographers out there like Oswaldo, Moody Darkroom. He does this amazing job of like the subject is super properly lit, and then everything back behind them is like so dark in his studio. It's crazy. And so for that, I think the lowest shutter speed on that one is like, I wanted to properly light the subject, but I didn't want, and then I had the light close enough to her so that I didn't have to have too much separation in terms of she's really bright and the room is really dark. So yeah, let's see. If that doesn't answer your question, we could talk about it later. I don't know if I probably wasn't 10 out of 10 on that one. What about native ISO for the sensor? Is it reasonable to use it in the studio as it is the best quality for the photo? And in studio, you can have as much light as you want. I got to be honest, like I'll eat crow on this one. I have not really thought about like what the image sensor's native ISO is and like what I should be shooting at. I just kind of go with my gut, and I know that 400 to 800 is not going to get me into too much trouble in terms of adding too much grain to the image or too much too much noise. So that's an awesome question. I hadn't even thought about it. I could look into it. Ivana, do I always use autofocus? Yes, I find the autofocus on Sony is like pretty damn good. The only situation where like I might not is if it's just repeatedly missing what I want it to focus on, then I'll flip over to manual, and and I think sometimes kind of it depends on time. Like, do I have the time to do that? Um, or like, am I in a super huge rush? But yeah, I'm happy to flip into manual focus if the autofocus is missing, but I find that Sony's usually pretty good. I was just shooting a thing about a week ago for like a speaker company. And one of the things I needed to use manual focus more than I'm used to, because I needed to like really perfectly get the logo on the front of the speakers. And I wanted to catch one specific point of it. So that's one situation where I flipped into manual. So cool. Okay. I think I've gotten everything. If I didn't, let's hit it at the end. Oops. Okay. Let's talk equipment really quick. Like, you can shoot really good photos on near so many cameras. So this is by no means an advertisement. This is by no means saying like you need to buy this or anything like that. I'm only going to tell you like what pictures I used to take, or what I used to take these pictures. My camera was a Sony A7 IV. I have been using this bad boy for 3-4 years, whatever it is. I have had wonderful luck with it. I don't really feel any need to upgrade. I guess I could, but to me, I'd rather buy more film cameras because there's lots of shit out there that I really want, rather than upgrading my digital rig. I probably also could upgrade to G Master lenses because But anyway, it's a great camera. The lens I shot all of these pictures on was the Tamron 35 to 150 f2 to f2.8. This is a new lens for me. I got it, I don't know, last spring, 9 months ago, whatever it is. I think this lens is sick, and I love having the zoom because I can get a meaningfully closer cropped image without having to stand really close to somebody. So I'm really psyched about that. And it feels very different for me being somebody who pretty much did everything on a 24 to 70 for 5 or 6 years. The one downside I think of the Tamron that keeps it from being like absolutely just like staggering value for the money is I feel like color reproduction is just a little bit off. I'm really nitpicking because I think it's awesome. But that's maybe the one little thing holding it back. But that's a sick lens. And pro tip, if you're gonna buy it and you live here in the States, just keep an eye on it. Like weirdly, I found it for like $300 or $400 off of all places on Walmart.com. So, and I've seen it multiple times. Like it's a meaningfully better deal than if you buy it on Amazon. So anyway, um, the other lens that I didn't shoot these on, but I just wanted to tell y'all because I don't know when the next time I'll do one of these is. I the 24 to 70 from Sigma is like really, really good. I've had a ton of luck with that. Used it for 5 or 6 years. It's awesome. And then one other thing that like I think a lot of people use, but I have been a huge proponent of it for years and years, is like a mist filter. I use the Black Pro Mist from Tiffin, like the quarter strength on pretty much everything I shoot, and I love it. Like I think it adds like some really nice texture to the image. So that's just a thing that like I just always really enjoy. I don't ever really want to go above a one quarter strength. I've tried the one half and the one, and I'm like, yeah, it's a little too dreamy for me. But I think it just adds like a little bit of texture to the image that I think is really cool. So anyway, yes, Walmart. Okay, um, let's see. Top three images I could have done better on. I think the one on the left is Taylor's favorite. It's I think it's really good. But I just think I could have lit it. I lit it too uniformly. Like I wish I had like a like 10% more separation from the background and like a little bit more richness. Like if I could have maybe turned us 10 degrees or something and added a little more shadow to that photo, I think it would have been a 10 out of 10. In the middle photo, I like that photo a lot. I just feel like I could have shot it from maybe 10 degrees higher, and I think it would have been even better. And then this photo on the right, this is one of like the ones that got away, man. I think like the angles of this, the moment is just super cool. It's perfect. I wish, kind of like the first one that I said, if I had rotated us like 10 degrees back towards the light, we would have had a little bit more light on the side of Taylor's face, and I think it would have been even better. Like it would have been absolutely like flagship. It's still really, really good, but like that's one I wish I could have had back. So, okay, let's see. Okay, so let's recap. Look at this, 928. Hell yeah. These are three things. Like my goal is practical and useful for y'all. Hopefully this has been at least like somewhat useful. Here are three things I think you could probably run with, like if you wanted to take them away and install them in your own practice. One, when you're thinking about how you want to dial in your lighting and you're working in a studio, remember that Rembrandt was doing it in the 1600s when he was painting himself. That is still a really, really effective lighting approach. Just remember, I got to build a triangle. And so if you're ever nervous or you're like, you're trying, like you got the subject there and you're trying to figure out how am I going to dial in my light? What are we going to do? It's not looking good in this camera. Um, just remember what happens if I build a triangle and kind of situate your light either at your maybe 1:30 on the clock or your maybe, I don't know, 10:30 on the clock, give or take, and then your subject's right in front of you. And you can fix a lot of gaps just trying that. So next, underexposing somewhere around half a stop to one stop. I'm a big proponent of this. I think it puts more shadows in your work and it allows you to, I think it just gives you a little bit more freedom with editing. And then number three, if you can manage it financially and your city provides it, many do, see if you can test out a cyc wall with a studio shoot, like, and maybe you get a couple other photographers and a couple of models or whatever to go in on it with you to try to split the cost and like, hey y'all, let's go book a couple hours and let's just go bang bang bang, try to hit this for a little bit of money, and so we can get something like that in our portfolio. It's super fun, man. It's super fun. So okay, let's see. Group Q&A. Is there anything I didn't answer or like about what we covered today or anything else you want to know or um yeah, I mean, I'm open, man. I'm keen to help if you've got anything. First one, how do you determine when to shoot with a really high shutter versus a high aperture? Oh, dude, yeah, let's talk about this. Okay. um, to me, I think I am choosing between those two things based on what the image demands. So, like, here's what I mean by that. Like, if I know I need to shoot something that's moving really fast, like let's say a rodeo, for example, like when I'm out in the, wherever shooting rodeos, um, excuse me, I know I must have a shutter speed like really fast, like one one 1600th of a second, 1/2000th of a second, something like that. I gotta like otherwise the photos just they fundamentally will not work because the animal's moving very fast. So I know that I have to do that, and I will bias everything else in order to do that. The widest aperture, I'll blow out my ISO. Like sometimes you have to do it. I've had rodeos where I've got to get to 10,000 ISO because the lighting is so poor, and I need a fast image. And then pushing it to the max in terms of denoise in Lightroom later. And like there's downsides of that. On the flip side, if like there are situations where you're gonna need a really high aperture because it's super bright outside. Like you got to dial it up to or narrow it to f16. So I think it to me, I'm making those decisions based on what the situation presents. But my general bias, like the home base for me, is that I want to kind of live like wide aperture, fast shutter speed, low to medium ISO, like in that 400 to 800 range. And then I'm going to flex off of those general tenets depending on what the situation dictates. Um, Another example might be like if I'm using flash, like many of y'all may have found my videos because of flash photography. Um, the what I'm doing there is like I'm gonna control my aperture because like the other two settings you can pretty much lock. Like I know my shutter is gonna have to be like around 1/200th of a second. I my ISO 400 to 800 give or take. So it's all about the aperture in that situation. And if I want a really contrasty image, then I'm gonna probably have a narrow aperture like f11, f15, f16, something like that, maybe f8. But if I just want like a little bit of fill flash because the situation doesn't need to be super contrasty, then I'll have a wider aperture. So anyway, that's just my take. I hope that answers your question. How far was the light from the subject? Yeah, let me show you a picture. Here is what that looked like. I'll scroll back. Hang on. Here we go. So like, I don't know, I would say 3 to 5 feet, a meter and a half is like the distance from the subject, give or take. That's probably, uh, yeah, I think that's it. The light I used on that one, I wish I had the exact model number for you. It's a studio I don't own. I just rent it when I go to Dallas. It was from Godox. They make perfectly solid, studio lights. I've used lights from GVM. I've used lights from Aputure. I tend to not be too particular on like studio lights like this. I care way more about the modifier than I do care about the brand of the actual light itself. I hope that helps. And if you have any further ones, let me know. Um, let's see. How would I resolve this issue from data Eclipse? Do me a favor, say more. I want to answer your question. Do I always use the mist filter? 90+% of the time. Um, I think I hear people say you can get that look in post. Whatever, man. Like maybe I tend to bias, like believe the same thing as you. Um, I want to do as much as I can to cook the image in the camera so that I have the because I hate editing. Other people don't feel that way. Like I hate editing, so I don't want to do it. And so if the more I can do to make the image as close as possible to what I want it to look like when it comes out of the camera, that's what I want to do, and that's why I love the Tiffin, like those Pro Mists. Tiffin's a good one. There's other brands. You don't have to get Tiffin. Yeah, but I highly recommend it. Uh, I use it for like very rarely will you see an image for me that I didn't use that on, unless it's a film camera. But pretty much any other situation, yeah, I used it. Um, I've had a studio session where the flash did not work or agree with my setup, so I spent a lot of time fixing and setting up. It ate up my studio time. Oh, that's so frustrating. I've had that happen a number of occasions. I know exactly what that feels like. It sucks. To me, one thing that I have done, which can help, is I'll and again, it costs a little bit more money, but like I'll try to get to the studio. I'll book a half an hour before the talent is showing up, especially if it's a studio that I haven't used ever or a studio that I haven't used in a while or what have you. Um, yeah, the other thing you can do that I've done a couple of times is like in some cities I've got friends that I've shot with a bunch of times. If I'm testing out a new studio, I'll make my first hour in that studio or my first hour and a half in that studio with them and I'll be like, "Look, we got to go run like we got to go run water through the pipes on this studio and figure this thing out. Like it may not be perfect." Um and man, I think that just comes with building creative relationships with people. So, yeah. Okay, let's see. Um Mist filter, studio session, BTS, what's my approach? Yes. Okay. I am approaching BTS typically a couple of different ways. And like it's kind of a newer thing for me, since I started, doing all the creator stuff about 18 months ago. I would say there's like a few big pieces of my BTS strategy. Like the core foundation of it is I'm gonna put an iPhone on a tripod and let it rip. Literally, when the iPhone 17 Pro came out, I bought the 1 TB version because I was tired of running out of space. Like it literally was a huge reason for it was BTS. So I have a cheap tripod. I put the iPhone on it and I let it rip because you never know. Like sometimes it's really helpful to have, and sometimes it just you don't need it. So that's the first piece. The second piece is um, I'm also often, not always, using the Ray-Ban Meta glasses, and I'll always ask somebody. I'll be like, "Hey, can I shoot some BTS on this?" Because I think it's kind of cool to be able to be like, "Look, this is how it actually looked from my eyes." Um, and so I'll do that too. And then the third thing that I'm trying to do, and this is a little newer for me, and I haven't really posted a lot of this, is like I'm trying to actually like when I see like when we get the light really dialed in, or this if it's outdoors, like if the scenery is really good or whatever it is, like this is a shot that I like. I'm trying to be like, let's take 30 seconds and let me shoot a little moving portrait on an iPhone. And Taylor, there's an example of this. Like we did exactly that in this studio shoot. And because I think it can be great for like the texture in an Instagram carousel. You never know when you're going to use it, etc. Like, I think those are kind of like my big three things for BTS. Like, and if you can only pick one, put your iPhone on a tripod and just let it rip. You're gonna have a 10-minute video file or whatever it is, and just stop and start it every time you remember. And then I think you can scale up from there. But at least do something. Um, One of my like most creative, best creator friends keeps telling me, he's like, I think the BTS is just as important as the photos, which as like a working photographer, I'm like, oh, it stings. But in terms of the ability to storytell and build a narrative around the work, I think that there's a lot of truth to that. So, okay, let's see. Mist filter, studio session, BTS. What was the light power? Light power on this one, shoot. Um, it was gonna be between 60 and 100, if I remember correctly on this one. I think I don't have an exact answer for you. I wish I did. Um, what would we change on the parameters? Instead of a constant light, there would be a flashlight if we replace continuous. Oh, yeah. Okay. So, like, if we were going to try to shoot this with strobe rather than continuous light, that's a really interesting question. Okay. What I wouldn't change is let's talk about the variables we would keep the same. Shutter speed would be about the same, right? Like 1/160th to 200. I wouldn't be messing with that. ISO would be the same, 4 to 800, probably, give or take. Your aperture might change. That's the one where I think you're going to want to be like testing, like, do I like it at 2.8? Do I like it at 5.6, etc. The positioning of the light, I'm probably going to leave it pretty much the same. Maybe back it out a little bit further because I've seen some photographers that have a enormous amount of success with shooting these gorgeous flash images where they crank the flash power up as much as they possibly can and then make the light as far away from the subject as they possibly can rather than using low flash power and the light close to the subject. And who does that? Sam Domashek does that. That's his logic is like, I want it to mimic the sun as close as possible, which is a powerful light source that's far away. So that's how he approaches flash in a lot of situations, and I think that's really interesting. So Miko, I hope that answers your question. I think I'm going to control, keep my shutter speed, keep my ISO, probably keep aperture similar, maybe move it. You kind of got to figure it out. But the difference, I think, is your lighting power and the position of your light. I think I might pull it further away and go stronger on the light. So, yeah, hope that helps. Is it a must to have a meter reading to tell you what light setting to use, or are you able to break the rule and be creative with a light? I am just going to level with you, Colin. I have never used a light meter in my whole flipping life. I've seen people do it. Like, I think it's, especially if you're shooting a lot of film, like you kind of need one, you know? I think that's awesome, but I have never used a light meter. I'm just looking at it in the camera, and every time an image comes out, I'm using that to just help me think through what do I need to do to the next image. Also, side note, I have seen a couple of really, really big photographers use a digital camera almost as like a bird dog in lieu of a light meter. So, like, for example, if you're shooting in studio, what they'll do is they're like, okay, I know I got to get my light right. I'm going to shoot this on a digital camera where I can get feedback on the image in real time and then figure out about where my lighting needs to be. Like, okay, I know my shutter speed needs to be this. I know my aperture needs to be this. Blah, 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 blah. And then once they feel like they've got it, then they'll flip over to their film camera and they'll use those exact settings on the same approach on their film camera. So I've seen that before in lieu of a light meter. Just thought that was interesting. Yes, forget editing. Yes, Tyler, I agree. When I prep for a shoot with lighting, specifically in a studio, do I sketch out where I want my lights beforehand? Absolutely not. And I don't mean like you shouldn't, but I don't know, man. I'm not like a super heavy prepper. I'm gonna get in and it's like it's jazz. Like it's not super structured. I'm just gonna find my way as I go. Because I think that's like part of the fun. Like it's like I am in the studio is like a laboratory. I'm in the lab. We're experimenting. We're seeing what happens. Um, yeah, I don't know. So that's not to throw shade on anyone that does want to draw their lighting diagrams or figure all that out. I think it's awesome. I just don't have the I don't have yeah, I don't have it. So okay, let's see. Um when setting up lights, do you focus on the technical side of light powers and distances of shoot more, or from creative side and what feels right? Dude, it's like I said, it's just jazz. I'm just trying to figure it out. My external hard drives are an absolute graveyard of crap images. Like there's so much junk in there. And because a lot of my work is still shot on digital, that's okay. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't cost me anything. And what I'm trying to do more is use digital, kind of like I mentioned, as a bird dog. Like when I see a really good image come through the viewfinder on the digital camera, I'll drop that thing down, pull up my film camera, and I'll be like, "You got to give me that exact same thing over again because that was sick." I'm sure Taylor can speak to that. We probably did a lot of that. So let's see. What is my favorite light modifier? I'm going to take two. I'm cheating. I'm going to do one for continuous and one for strobe. Um, my favorite continuous lighting modifier is just like a standard softbox, probably 3 feet wide, like 36 inches or a meter, whatever that would be, with a white little sheet thing over it. And my favorite modifier when I'm on the go using strobe is going to be Godox does this. I like it. It's like on the V1 or the V1 Pro, they have a little magnetic dome that can go over it. And it's not like the big rubbery white plastic dome, like it's like a translucent kind of clear plastic dome that just magnets on. I think that's it. I love flash photography. I'm sure you'll know that. I think it adds like a little bit of softness and it's just super, yeah, it's just like, it takes a little bit of the edge off of the flash when you're out in the wild. So I think it's really cool. So oh, cool. Look, Zachary back on the using his digital to get his exposure correct on his film. There you go. So he's doing exactly that. Yeah, so that's a way to approach it. Do I prefer strobe or continuous? Oof. Okay, this is great. My perspective has changed on this. Um, I I prefer strobe when I'm out in the wild. Like, you know, I mean, I just like I love like run and gun flash. Like how many videos have been made about that? Like I really like it. When I'm in a studio, I was a strobe guy for years to begin with, but I feel like over the last year or two, my hit rate with continuous light in studio has gotten meaningfully better than my hit rate with strobe in studio. So I might be becoming a continuous light guy when I'm indoors. Um, and I'm also like, I'm maybe a little bit self-conscious right now on like, do I still know how to shoot strobes indoors? Like, am I losing my edge? So maybe I need to practice that. I do need to keep practicing that because I shot some indoor strobe early in my career that I just like love, and last couple years I haven't nailed it quite right. So I got to get back to it, I guess. So, um, how do you pick between continuous or flash? That's a good question. I I think like here's like let me just riff for a sec. I think flash or strobe is great when you want to preserve motion or emotion in time. Like I think flash is so good for that in particular. I think continuous light is good when you're trying to like create a setting, like especially if you want to play with color or you really want to like fine tune exactly where the shadows are at, etc. You can do it with strobe. I just think like having the light actually happening in real time that second is like nice to be able to make calibrations. So yeah, Ivana, what continuous light do I recommend? All right. So two-part answer. One is I'm not super particular about this. Like I feel like I've run into a range of studios and I just use whatever they've got. Some brands that I've had perfectly good success with and shot work that I love would be GVM. It's like a lower cost brand. Aperture, they're lovely. They've actually sponsored. It's so weird to say. Yeah, they've sponsored me a couple of times. Godox. It makes tons of good stuff. I've done a couple of videos with them. I'm not total super precious about like the lighting equipment. I care more about the modifiers. Let's see. If I was going to make a product recommendation to you on continuous light, I did not pay for these. They did send me these to make videos, but I can at least tell you that I do really like them. It's a light called the Storm 80C. I'll put it in the chat. Storm 80C from Aperture. And it's not one of their most expensive. It's kind of like their, I guess, mid-range, but the build quality on it is like really good, like really, really good. And I think that could be one that you might consider if you're like looking to make the investment in continuous lights. Just one option. So, but you also, I mean, brands would hate me saying this, like get on Facebook Marketplace and look to buy secondhand. You'd be real surprised what you can find out there that people are trying to get rid of. All the time, there's photographers that are getting out of this industry, which is great for us. So, what film stock do I use? I'm so lazy about this, man. Kodak Portra 400. I just don't mess with anything else. I really like it. I think it's good. I like the colors. I found a developer that I like. I don't mess around. So maybe I will someday, but yeah, I don't mess around. I know that feeling. Yeah. And it can be hard. Like, I mean, I think it was you earlier that asked the question, like, what do you do in a studio with windows? Like that makes it super tough. Like, you know, it can be hard. Like if you're working in a studio that's traditionally or like often used as a natural light studio, so they have big windows, which is great for that purpose. It can be hard to bring in lights. This is something I've done a few times, but like when I need to shoot something with artificial lights, flash, continuous, what have you, and uh, and the only studio I have is something with big windows. I'll just shoot it at night. Like I'll be like, we're shooting this at 8 p.m. and it's kind of a pain in the butt, but it works. So I think that's it. Let's see if we missed any questions. What have we been going for? 50 minutes. Son of a gun. That's awesome. We got a lot of good questions today. Anything else anyone wants to know? I think we're good. Yeah. Going once, going twice, going three times. Okay, cool. All right, so we're gonna wrap this thing. Thank everybody. Like that was super fun. I really enjoyed that, and hopefully it was helpful for y'all. There will be a live stream of this if anybody ever wants to go watch it again. Thank you so much. That's really nice of you to say, Lab. Um, the next things is like just let me know how you feel about this. You can email me right back at whatchamacallit at the email that I sent y'all with the link. You can also send me a DM on Instagram. I'm trying to figure out like what might a live stream cadence look like, and should I be doing this on a regular basis? This is interesting. Like I think it was super cool. We had like 20, 25 people here. That was awesome. And really good, thoughtful questions. So thank you. Let me know what you think. And if the interest is there and people want to do this again sometime, I think maybe we would do another. So yeah, thanks to everybody. And I hope you have a really good rest of your day. So catch y'all later. Thank you. Bye.